want to pull out the general fund. That's 7.1 or 7.01. That's all that the state legislature really controls. Because anything that's in the cash fund, they're usually cash funds that have been collected for a specific purpose. They should be used for that specific purpose. We shouldn't be messing with them. However, when we have downturns, we sweep cash funds, and that's not a good practice, but we have in the past. The reappropriated funds, those kind of get moved around. We mess with those, but that's really not where we make our discretionary decisions, and that's not really our spending pot. And then, of course, the $5 billion from federal funds, whenever you bring down federal funds, you bring down strings attached. And it's amazing. So there's no gift from the feds. Also, when you hear the term waiver, when the federal government says waiver, what they're saying is, we'll let you sort of do what you want to do as long as you expand your program to a larger extent and give us more of what we want. So that's the way the waiver process works. So if you hear national health care reform waivers, that's not necessarily, it's not what it says it is. So in the 7.01 billion of that, the general fund, if you look at the numbers, K through 12 last year got about 40% of it. Health and Human Services, that's Medicaid, developmentally disabled. Those are all the services that we give to those in need at the county level, the city level. And that's also Medicaid. HICPUF is basically, there's two departments. Human Services, which deliver actual services to communities and to counties. And then there's HICPUF. And when anybody talks about healthcare policy and finance, remember what HICPUF really is it's a big insurance company. And all they really do is process claims for Medicaid. And quite honestly, to tell you the truth, there's a lot of legislators that don't know that. It's amazing, but they don't know that. So anyway, so intake up about 32.6%, and then corrections judicial about 13.9%, higher ed 8.9%. One thing you need to know about higher ed, it used to be 15 years ago, 2/3 of the cost of higher ed was borne by the state, and so that meant that the parents or whomever that were paying for that higher ed education took that 1/3 of the cost. It is now flipped. Parents and those students are now paying for 2/3 of that cost, and the state is paying for 1/3 of that. Yesterday we were doing figure setting for higher education, and by figure setting, what I'm talking about is we are, in the next 2 weeks, we are going to decide what the budget will be. And the next, a week from now, is when the fighting will begin. It'll be done in private, and it'll be done quietly. And my goal as chair of the Joint Budget Committee is you will never hear about it. What you'll see is a unified, positive budget that comes out of it, and you won't see the family disagreements that are about to start. And so then the 0.7% is everything else, and then 3.5%, well, no, that's actually wrong. The 0.7% is everything else. And no, that's not right. That's right. General government is 0.7%. General government is things like paying for the governor's office, and other is just all the different departments that we have, like, or shall we say, transportation, and those departments. And actually, our agriculture industry is a huge economic driver of the state, and it's cash funded. I don't think they get more than about $500,000 of general fund. They are incredibly self-sustaining. So what we all felt last year is that we were in trouble. We felt like after the ARA funds had been depleted, we'd gone through all of our one-time dollars. We played all the tricks 10 years ago to get through the last recession, and we never really could recover from them. And so last year, this JBC decided that what we were going to do is we were going to try to do as much as we could to take care of some of our dangerous spending habits. The other problem we had is that we kept seeing cash funds growing in the state. And if a cash fund grows too much, that tells you that, number one, you probably want to reduce the fee or the license that's associated with that cash fund, because actually what we want to do is we want to accumulate cash funds for the purposes that they're required, but we also don't want to create an undue burden on the people of Colorado. So we were looking at that as well. And we wanted to, and this was bipartisan. We wanted to have a fiscally responsible approach. Lovato, and those of you that I'm sure everybody here knows what the Lovato ruling was that just came down. When I was talking about the budget, when I was talking about the amount of money that goes into the different departments, right now and we're doing figure setting, we just finished the first round of it this morning, before Ron picked me up to bring the over here. But currently we spend, out of the $7 billion that we spend in the state general fund, we spend $3 billion on K-12 education. Now the Lovato ruling, although they didn't say there was going to be a real ruling, the judge wasn't going to tell us what to do, but they strongly indicated that they felt that what we should be doing is we should be spending another $4 billion every year from now on for K-12 education. So if we're spending $3 billion and they're asking for another $4 billion and we only have $7 billion, that's our budget. No more money for state patrol, prisons, and we're required federally to take care of our prisoners. We have to keep them healthy. I mean, so there's a disconnect right there. So that was a challenge that we've gone into the year facing. The other challenge that we have had during the Ritter administration, HICPA, which is the Medicaid portion that I was talking about, primarily that's what they're doing there, that budget increased by $1 billion. Now that wasn't all state funds, but that was a lot of help, a lot of general fund too. When I would talk to groups a year ago, I would tell them that 1 out of every 4 babies in Colorado that's born is a Medicaid baby. It used to be that we had about 600,000 people on Medicaid. This year, 1 out of every 3 babies that are born in Colorado is a Medicaid baby. By the time national health care is implemented and we have a soft start, now we have to start at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, which is October 2013. It goes into full place in January of 2014. It has to be fully implemented by 2017. By the time 2017 happens, they estimate we'll have 750,000 people on Medicaid in the state of Colorado. I actually think we're going to have 1 million, which means that 1 out of every 5 people is on Medicaid. Now, Ohio right now is looking at 1 out of every 5 people on Medicaid currently before the implementation of health care reform. They're probably going to, in the end result, they're going to be looking at 1 out of every 3. And if you look at the associated costs that we have with implementing health care reform, it's not, although nationally, federally, when the bill passed, it had what it had never happened before. They put an appropriation clause with it. In other words, they funded the bill as it passed, which had never happened at the federal level before. Even so, Colorado this year, we're putting another $187 million out of our general fund into the new Medicaid populations. So when people tell you that the dollars are already there, the state doesn't have to participate with the implementation of health care reform, with all due respect, that's not true. We are. So our problem is we're getting into a situation where we've got a federal mandate of health care reform, and I'm not going to get into the politics because it is what it is. It's here. I operate under the rules of the current rules, whether it be Tabor or health care reform. I do my job. But right now, if the Lovato ruling were to stand, we don't have any money. So that's part of the challenge that we face. And this is, I was just talking about the 1 in every 3. So it's bipartisan feeling in the state that really we need to do better. Everybody knows, everybody that goes to work down there, and every one of those legislators, God bless them, they love their constituents, they are there, they are giving of themselves, it's a service to the state, they are doing the very best thing that they can. Now, philosophically we don't all agree, but I do respect what they do, and again, they work very, very hard for everyone. But given that attitude, we know that we're on a better path. When you get 100 people in a room, although it's so dysfunctional, you can't believe that anything good's going to happen from it. Actually, good does happen. And we will find a way, and we will get through this. And unlike the federal level, we in the state of Colorado, we have to balance our budget, and we do, by and large, work together. And it's a much different story here than it is at the federal level. We are blessed as a state. And I think, I don't know if a lot of you know that actually in Colorado, it's a weak governor state. Governor Hickenlooper said, I had a whole lot more power when I was mayor of Denver than I do now as governor. And in Colorado, we're one of 3 states with Arizona and Texas where we actually